As you might recall, during this year, during ordinary time, where we are hearing a kind of a continuous reading from Mark's Gospel. But as you may have noticed, today was not from Mark, it was from John 6, 1 to 15. Well, there's a reason for that. Mark's Gospel is really short. There's not enough to go around for a whole year, right? So for the next month, we're going to have a little John interlude. So it's like intermission from Mark. So we'll be hearing this reading today, and then in the weeks to come, for the next 4 weeks or so, with the Assumption falls on a Sunday this year, so that kind of gets in there. But for about the next month or so, we'll be hearing from the Bread of Life discourse, a text that we can never hear too often, really, because they are foundational to the faith. Back many centuries ago, one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, who was a man of his time, a man of the Enlightenment, a man of the age of reason, and probably we could describe him as a deist, right? As a person who believed, as many people did of his time, right, especially educated people of his time, that God was like a watchmaker, right? God made everything, right? Wound up the watch, let it go. And that was it for God, right? God is just the creator, and that's about it. With no further interaction with the creation, other than, really, you could say, to establish the laws of nature and the natural law. It was up to us to kind of figure out how to go. Because that was his mindset, Jefferson read the scriptures and found all kinds of wisdom there, right? He was certainly taken by the life of Jesus. He was taken by his teachings, but he had no use for the miracles, right? Because that's not reasonable, right? So he bought 2 copies of the scriptures, because if you think about this, you'll need 2, right? Printed copies, and his scissors, and he cut up the texts, and he cut out all the miracle stories, and then he rearranged it all so that it was kind of a continuous reading of the life of Jesus from his birth to his death. Needless to say, the story that we heard today is not in there. In fact, there's almost nothing, if anything, from the first 12 chapters of John's Gospel, because the first 12 chapters of John's Gospel is called the Book of Signs. It's a series of great miracle stories, right, that we're all familiar with. Wedding Feast of Cana, the text we have today, the raising of Lazarus. You know all those stories. So he had no use for those. Jesus was, for Jefferson and so many people of his time, Jesus was a great moral teacher. And that's it. That's it. In our own day, we have a lot of people who would self-identify as Christians, people who would identify themselves as perhaps theologians, and in particular, scripture scholars, right? We'll read this story that we just heard, that everybody knows the details of, right? Everybody in this room could tell me exactly what was in this story, with very precise details, right? Many scripture scholars look at this text and say, well, what's the miracle is that, there was all these people, right? And they're hungry, right? And there's this little kid, and he's got lunch for himself, right? And he, in his innocence, is willing to share. And that great expression of human kindness inspires everybody else to do the same thing, and they reach in their bags and they pull out the lunch that they already brought and share it with other people so that everybody gets fed. There are scripture scholars today that interpret this story in this way, removing the whole point of the story, that it's a miracle. Without the miracles of Jesus, right, and without him as Messiah and just not a great teacher, as we said many times here before, what do you have? A nice guy. Right? Now, the interesting thing with all this is, so people today will read that story. So the people who think this is like, oh, we all sat down, sang Kumbaya, and shared our lunch, right? That lot, right? And see it as a great triumph of human justice. Everybody gets what they need. And it is, right? But you don't need Jesus in the story, right? If that story could have happened, and if you never mentioned Jesus, it still would have been a great story, right? Jesus has no function in that story, right? And there's a deeper reality there. There's a deeper truth there, because once you eliminate things like that, then you could go back to the Jewish law and commandments, and all that stuff is in there, right? If you want a collection of commandments and laws that will create a peaceful, just society, it's in the Jewish law that God gave to Moses. We just heard this in the weekday readings recently, right? Everything was already there. You don't need Jesus for any of that. But the reality is we do. The reality is we do. We know that there is more to life than a free lunch, right? We know that there's more to life than if you're sick, you get better. Right? There's more to life than that. We have this deep understanding that we need something more than a free lunch and a really, really, really good doctor. Right? But the reality is, many people in our world see that as a great society, right? If everybody's got a free lunch and everybody's got health care, it's all you need. Those are all important things. Those are good things. But that's not enough, is it? Why? Because we know, just looking at ourselves, just looking at myself, right? I'm not always a generous person. I'm not always a peaceable person. I'm not always a kind person, a compassionate person, a merciful person. Why? Because I am a fallen person, right? And the rest of you can do your own confession and examine your own conscience to see where you are on that. Maybe I'm unique here, but I've got my suspicions that that's not true. Right? In fact, we probably all realize we have a great need, and it's more than a free lunch and health care. Right? What do we need? We need a Messiah. We need someone who is going to undo all this, and someone who will lead us and help us on the journey to become the people that we were meant to be from the creation, right? Going back to the watchmaker notion, right? What Jefferson and his deist friends forgot was the warranty on the watch wasn't very long, because once it kind of like kept really lousy time, if you want to use that analogy, right? The watch almost got broke immediately, and there was nobody to fix it. Right? That's why we need Jesus. Right? We need someone who can lead us on the journey to become the people that we're meant to be. Right? Not just nice people. That's important. Being a nice person is really important. Right? It certainly makes our lives better. It makes our lives more pleasant. Right? And in fact, it's a just thing. Right? But we know we need more than that. Right? And that's the miracle today. This great sign. Now, it's interesting that this sign occurs in the middle of the book of signs. Right? In the exact middle almost, really. Why is that? And before I say that, when does it happen? The Jewish feast of Passover was near. That's not a throwaway line. That's not just so you can fix your calendar and kind of figure out when this happened. Right? You're supposed to be thinking Passover when you hear this story. Because when we get to the Passover, actually farther down, probably a year down the road, but when we come to the last Passover of Jesus' life, what do we have? The Last Supper, the Passion, the Resurrection. The great sign in John's Gospel. The fulfillment of John's Gospel. Something that goes well beyond anything the givers and the keepers and the scribes and scholars of the Jewish law could ever have imagined. Right? Because someone was going to come and was going to fix this mess. But not just giving out free lunches and health care. Right? We've got more than enough politicians that will promise you that. Right? And they never deliver, right? But that's not what this is about. Right? That's not what this is about. Because in John's Gospel, there is no Last Supper, interestingly enough, right? You probably knew that. There is no Last Supper as we understand it in John's Gospel. This story is it. And then in the weeks to come, in the next 3-4 weeks, whatever it is, Jesus is going to unpack that reality and say, just to give a preview of coming attractions, right? Just look at the movies, right? Jesus is going to point out right away, why are you people following after me? Because I gave you free health care and free lunches, right? And he himself is going to say, this is not the point. I am the bread of life. I am the bread of life, not the free lunch. Jesus is the sustenance on the road to true life. And this isn't it. Right? Jesus feeds us. Jesus gives us what we need. We believe that our God is a good God. Right? And the reality is, our understanding needs to be, we need to tune our vision there. Because if we think God is only here to give us free lunches and health care, we are going to be sadly disappointed in this world, aren't we? Because one of the realities is, when you get the free lunch, you're going to complain, I could have used another cookie in there. Right? We're never satisfied. That's the point. Right? We're messed up. We tend to be greedy. Right? But God gives us every good thing that we truly need on this journey, and a promise for eternity. Right? We thank the Lord for that gift, and we ask the Lord to help us to turn to the Lord and seek out what we truly need. Now, it's those who are in need of health, right? Those who are maybe poor, impoverished, should pray for that, should pray to God, Lord, help me. Those are basic human needs, right? But there's more to this story than that. There's more to this life than this. And the Lord is with us on that journey, giving us all the true food that we truly need.